Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And welcome back to Open Your Eyes. We're now moving into our first segment for the morning. This segment, of course, a conversation with joint unions. As a matter of fact, we've got in with us Sharon Fraser, who is the president of the Association of Public Service Senior Managers, and also Dean Flowers, the first vice president of the PSU. Guys, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Marlene. Good morning, John and Belize.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Marlene. Good morning, Belize. Thanks for having us.
All right, so it's nice to have you guys in, especially for the fact that we need to hear from you as well. So it's no secret anymore. There were negotiations between yourselves and the government of Belize. While the negotiations were on the table, it was hard hitting, but GOB decided to, and it's out there that they've decided to move forward with what they've proposed to you. So let's start there. What's the situation, the current situation with GOB and the unions as we speak?
John, I hear you, and even as you started to make your comments, I'm here thinking that we as a joint union went before the table first based on a request for consultation, right? At some point in time, we realized that because consultation and negotiation has two different meanings. And at some point in time, we put it to the representative of government as to what exactly we were doing, whether we were still consulting or whether we were negotiating. And in fact, the deputy PM had confirmed to us at that point when it was put to us that we were negotiating. And negotiating means you give up something, I give up something. It can't be that persons come with a positional position, so to speak. It means that we're going to sit and we're going to try to see whether or not we can come to some agreement. It is not that the union, the joint unions have said that they were not going to accept a cut, and I want to say that from the beginning. And I'm sure that Brother Dean will back me up on this. We never said that. The ads and everything else. So we have been going into these meetings respectfully, cordially. We understand the dire situation that Belize is in, and we know that something has to happen. We went there open, we went there willing to do our part. We made various recommendations on how it is we could help with this financial situation that we're in. The impression that is being given that, in fact, we don't want to give up anything, we don't want to do anything, and we're this, and we have an agenda. The only agenda we have is to assist and help with dealing with the financial crunch that the country of Belize have, and to fulfill the mandate of the various members that we represent. Nothing more.
Before we go any further, I just want to get a reaction from both of you, since you have been the target of recent political ads. It is very interesting to see these types of ads at this time. I know. What's your reaction when you see the messaging that's coming out at this time?
Well, if Dean allows me, I am very disappointed because at no point in time I have been disrespectful. At no point in time. In fact, I think that I have been one of the cooler heads in the room. I bring with me my years of working in the public service, and with the fact that trying and have convinced and presented to my members where we are and that something has to happen. And it really bothers me because when I speak, yes, it's Sharon Fraser speaking, but I am representing the heads of department out there. So to attack me personally, I find this to be an all-time low of people who are supposed to be our leaders, who people are looking up to. Is this what we have come to know? But as I said, I am representing the heads of department and the senior managers in the in the public service, and as long as I guess I have breath, I'm going to do that. But I think the whole issue is that, as the saying goes, nobody's stone empty mango tree. So I don't know if that is how Brother Dean feels, because I know we are the targets.
You two specifically.
Me
yes.
and him.
Yeah.
Yes. Dean?
Brother Dean?
Well, good morning again. I smile over these things because I try to always remain respectful and always raise the standards. When they go low, we go high. And being a candle isn't easy. In order to give light, one must burn first, you know, and so on. But I want to say that for me personally, these personal attacks is water off my back. They don't discourage me. They don't have any real impact on me. They maybe, I don't know, have impact on those close to me. But for myself, when I placed myself in this position, these are not the type of attacks that we would expect to come from the government. The government is supposed to find ways to unite and lead its people, not attack its people. There is 6,000 plus public officers. There are 3,500 teachers. There are a little over 2,000 BDF, over 2,000 police officers. When we speak, we try to speak for and on behalf of public officers. The consensus where public officers are concerned that we have presented to the government and to this country comes from that mass body. If it is that the government felt that we were representing ourselves, the government had the opportunity and still has the opportunity to go to speak personally themselves to those 6,000 public officers that we represent, the 3,500 officers that Sister Elena represent, and the remainder, other 6 or so thousand public officers, to see if it is that we're speaking on their behalf. What's interesting here though, the Deputy Prime Minister in the last meeting that we have disassociated himself completely from the first attack, the first wave of attack that came in the Belize time. I will say that the rest of the team did not disassociate themselves from those attacks. So clearly it was endorsed. But I would have to give the DPM the credit, because in that meeting he disassociated himself completely and condemned those attacks. I cannot say the same for the rest of the team, and I cannot say the same for the Minister of National Security, who was on news last night, who also further dished out more attacks to say, look at the leaders, and so giving credence to that kind of attack. And it's a sad day because these are our leaders, and instead of preaching unity, instead of preaching respect, instead of trying to garner consensus, they're instead preaching hatred and division. It's a shame. That's on them, and may God bless them.
Well, I appreciate your reaction to the ads, and I think if one thing we can say is usually when you do take on leadership roles, it comes with its own challenges, and oftentimes facing criticism is one of them. Yeah. What is unique about this situation, and I want to say it's not the first time union leaders get attacked, it probably won't be the last, it's just that it's typically seen right before an election or in an election cycle or campaign period. We are nowhere near any of that. But moving forward, let's get to the meat of the matter here. Today, the Briceño administration or government is going to present the first draft of the budget for what will be one of the most challenging times in our history economically. We know there is what seems to be an impasse. There seems to be no agreement between the unions and the government about how to move forward. We hear from the Prime Minister's message, and we hear from other ministers that the salary cuts have to happen because there is no other way for them to reduce their expenditures. I want to be very clear from the start. What is it, as of today, that the unions want from the government? What do you have on the table to say, these are our demands, or this is what we want to propose to move forward?
I can start in saying that while it is that the position is that we are not accepting the salary cut, in the case of APSSM, our no was conditional. And I want to say it was never an absolute no. It was a no, but not an absolute no. Mm-hmm. We wanted to ensure that, in fact, there were certain things put in place, which all of us want. We want a firm commitment, not wishy-washy commitment, not say, well, we intend to do this, or we've been there before. We've heard about all the measures. We've gone to extreme lengths to put together cost-saving measures, revenue enhancement measures. Now, cost-saving measures would mean that government will be cutting their expenses, Marlene and John. Yet, that I would have thought that that is the first thing that they would jump on. Yes, some of them are medium term, some of them are long term. But there are some immediate things that could have been done by way of cost savings. There was also the issue that we had agreed to with government, and here it doesn't matter whether it's a PUP or a UDP government. Government agreed on a moratorium as it relates to hiring. If the wage bill is high, man, please, how it is that we are supposed to be saying, all right, no problem, go ahead, take my 10%, and then we're hiring, we're doing unnecessary hiring.
And when you say you say unnecessary, it's because some of the posts are replacement posts.
Some are replacement, and I will admit to you that yes, some were replacement, and we cannot run away from that. So we didn't say absolutely no matter what, no hiring.
Okay.
It is ridiculous if it is that I can tell you, for example, where I am, we have shortage, and they did interviews to hire new magistrates. How could I say no hiring? It then means that I will forever be handicapped where I am if in fact we don't replace persons who are retiring, persons who would have resigned.
Okay.
So replacement is a given. But when it is, I'm seeing every minister with a communication expert, and we have a press office. Come on. When it is, I am seeing that in fact, and I won't say that it's not necessary to get 200 and whatever more boots on the ground, but take care of the financing first. If you're running a household and you don't have the money to maintain that house the way that you want, are you going to take in new children?
So let me just bring us back, because I want as much clarity as possible in understanding your position. You said that for the APSSM, which is the heads of department, the senior managers, you gave a conditional no to a salary cut. So you would take the salary cut if the government does what? Tell me.
Implement the cost-saving measures,
Yes.
implement the revenue enhancement, put in the legislations as it relates to good governance, recovery of assets, deal with persons who have illicitly benefited from fleecing the government coffers. Those are things. When it is you come to me and you talk about giving me 4 days, that is not really what I want. What I want is to ensure that come 3 years from now, we are not back at the same place. If you put in, you pass UNCA, you put in the other measures that will ensure that we're not back at the same place.
So,
and we understand it can happen today,
okay.
Marlene.
Okay. That was going to be my question. Because how do you...
understand that.
Yeah.
But we need firm commitment.
And what does firm commitment look like to you?
What is that? Yes.
Not saying we may do this, but that in fact we shall do this and give us a definite timeline.
Okay.
This government came in on a platform of good governance. So there are certain things that we have been asking. We've been asking for UNCAP for years. Some people let it seem as if, oh, it's just this government that we've been asking for that. If it is you're coming in and you're saying that there has been massive corruption, there have been this, there have been that, wouldn't one of the first thing you want to do is to put in the necessary legislation to ensure that nobody from your government or any future government can engage in some of the activity that has us in the mess that we are now? I don't think we're asking for anything that they're not aware of, that has not formed part of their manifesto, that we as the union have been asking for years. We've been asking for a rationalization of the hiring processes, right? So we are looking within ourselves as well and say, you know what, let us put in these things in place so that it can't be that every year you talk about the wage bill, but every government has used the open vote facility process to bring in their people.
So when you look at
increasing the number of persons who are in the public service and further creating a bloating of the wage bill.
now, you said that you go ahead, Dean. Sorry.
Yeah, let me just add here. The government has come to the unions for $80 million. And I want to state clearly that none of the unions from the onset said we're not about making any sacrifice, and that we won't entertain this kind of conversation. I think we went there in good faith, and we've always been open, transparent, both to the government and our membership. What the union said, and what my membership at the PSU is saying, is that the $80 million or the $60 million from the salary, since we were amenable to the increment fees of $20 million, will not fix the economic crisis, the debt crisis, and the poor governance that currently exists in government. What we're seeing here is a knee-jerk reaction. A knee-jerk reaction of an administration who 1 year ago was applauding thunderously the frontliners of this country, our nurses, our doctors, our police officers, our BDF soldiers, our Coast Guard people. And 1 year after, those thunderous applause has turned to, I'm going to make your life a little bit more miserable by removing 10%. So we're saying, look, before you take this 10% from the salaries of public officers, let us do a proper analysis of where we are, where both expenditures and revenues is concerned. To this day, the government has not had an open and honest conversation with this union where revenues is concerned. Any fiscal adjustment should rely both on expenditure and revenue measures. In their letter, the closest they came to adjusting revenues, and the revenue shortfall that we experienced in the last fiscal year is to say we will aggressively go up the tax. But how will we aggressively go up the tax? Of the almost $600 million that is in arrears, just between the BTS, the Belize Tax Services, and the Lands Department, no plan of action has been presented to this union. By what percentage do we intend to reduce that? How will, going forward, we will ensure that that doesn't grow? How will we look at the revenue leakages that is happening within the Customs Department and within the General Sales Tax Unit? How do we bring those two together to ensure that if we're collecting $1 at customs, then after all these markups, of these goods changing hands, then on the back end we should be collecting perhaps $200 because some of these things carry 200% in markup. These are the types of things that we could bridge this deficit in the budget. And let's not fool ourselves. Belize has never presented a balanced budget that does not include grants and loans.
Yeah.
And similar to this budget, which we have not seen, it will include loans. So what we wanted to see is, let's look at a comparison of all the years where the revenues is concerned, and let's put in place those mechanisms that will yield a higher earning where revenues is concerned. After we do all these things, after we put in all the austerity measures, we continue with the freezing of hiring people. We address the abuse of government vehicles, which again, we have presented that costs us in maintenance and vehicles and parts, fuel, it costs us in excess of $20 million. And we already told the police to confiscate vehicles. Yet, during the Easter holiday, we could have seen the vehicles from Perzal at the water park, all the way out west at the log cabin where I was, so I can speak for that one, and all the way down south. There is no commitment to respect the circulars that were put in place to address austerity last year, and so it's the same old narrative.
Yeah.
We want to do it, we don't do it, and we never get to do it.
From your end, Dean, just let me, because I think if we walk away knowing precisely what's on the table, then the public is better informed. On behalf of the APSSM, Sharon listed what they view as critical points. They want timelines for a number of things that are all connected with good governance and adhering to austerity measures. What's that list like for PSU?
It's the same thing, Marlene. It's about addressing, first of all, like I said, we wanted to see a government that led by example, a government that came in and immediately remove all the excesses. Yeah. We applaud the effort that they have made a push to look at perhaps cutting their salaries at 15%.
Yeah.
We applaud the effort to cut the entertainment allowances, even though the majority of the public officers that we've surveyed are saying we're not satisfied with 50%. It's not necessary. Remove the 100%. Let's be a revolutionary type. Let's be a revolutionary type government. No. But where the good governance issues are concerned, they're the exact same thing.
Yes, and I hear that, and it's like, well, I just want to be able to clarify. So I hear what you're saying, and it's what we spoke about with UNCAC, and we spoke about UNCAC for a very long time in years before, in the previous years. But it was ratifying and then saying that you would sign on to UNCAC, and then there's still steps that have to be taken. So knowing that there is a timeline, the budget has to be presented. The proposal for the cuts is so that there can be so that essentially part of the borrowing to be able to cover wages would stop and the debt would stop growing. So there is a timeline, whether it's Friday or after the debate or the finalization of the budget. The timeline actually should have been months ago, or last year. So what can you effectively agree to at this time, knowing that Whistleblowers Act, and I hear the point that things can be done overnight, and I make the point as well that Cabinet says they're introducing some bills. I don't know if this is tied anywhere to the negotiations. We don't know what those bills are as of this time. But what would you need to see to say, okay, I feel confident to move forward and know that the sacrifice and the cut that we're being asked to take is in good faith?
Well, as you just said, things have been done overnight in this country. Whatever it is that any government wants to do, they can do it at a snap of a finger in a number of cases. I was indicating to somebody that just look at the the state of emergency and the COVID-related 19 regulation. Before you know it, there was another one, a new one. So that, in fact, the truth of the matter is that even as you've said, a number of bills will be read. Obviously, none of them includes what we are asking for. Otherwise, the Prime Minister in his speech would have already told the public that to add to why it is we are being unreasonable, which I don't believe any at all that we have been unreasonable. We're not asking we're not asking him to move Victoria Peak, you know. We're not asking for that. We're asking for things that are within their control. We're asking for, rather than hearing that we make culpa, I am wrong, to tell us how we are going to reverse some of the actions that they have done that is in the slap of the face of the public officers when it is you're telling them we want to cut, but you are not cutting. They're saying one thing and we're seeing something else. And that is just, I mean, but like I said, if it is they wanted to do, um, put in these measures, some of these measures, and I want to reassure you and the public that we understand that everything cannot be done overnight. But if you give us firm commitments, I can assure you my members would support this, the recommendation to a cut. Some of them don't agree it should be 10%, but it has never been that we don't understand. Remember that as HODs and senior managers, we're seeing the actual state, we're seeing the figures. Public officers are working within the place that we're seeing this. So it's not that we're not blind to all of this, but it can't be that we make sacrifice and every time it's us to make sacrifice because we've done this already.
So, because
last year we did accept cuts, we did. So it must be that it is not just talking the talk, but you have to walk it as well. That is what we're saying. We cannot be spending on renting of new buildings when we have existing and appropriate buildings that can be used. The Deputy PM talk about all the offices that are being wasted in the Marianne Jones building, the building there at Marianne Jones, or even the Civic Center. There are many office spaces and we are paying rent. We're moving people out of buildings to satisfy political whatever. Okay, it's a given. We've seen that. But the time has come that it needs to stop. Especially when you're talking about expending monies from the consolidated funds that all of us contribute to. All of us, Marlene, including you, when you pay taxes, you're putting money in there as well.
I always remind people what public monies mean, and I always remind people how much they would enjoy that 25% they pay income tax at the end of the month and how much they're paying attention to how it's being spent. That's another conversation we can have on whether or not that foundation is being implemented from a very young age to or young people and children. But let's bring this back. The proposals from government, as we've heard so far, I want you to give me yes or no if you've agreed or disagreed to it. The first one is the most important one because we are talking about human beings. We call numbers and we talk 10%, but when you're talking about human beings, they have a livelihood, they have families, they have mouths to feed. The first one is the exemption of people who earn $12,000 a year. The salary is about $1,000 a month. Did the unions agree to that?
Yes, yes.
All right. The reduced work hours was one of the proposals made by government. In other words, we'll reduce your salary and you can also reduce your hours. What was the status of that proposal?
While it is that the APSSM and the PSU had no objection to that, a recommendation was made to add another hour to make it, because there is a 5-day week. as far as and I'm not in any way trying to speak for BNTU, but I know that in their presentation, they said that they didn't find this, they didn't know how they would benefit from this.
Well, it's impossible for teachers, let's be honest.
Right, because under the rules, they have to provide a certain amount of hours, teaching hours, by law. So that it would mean they would have to look at some amendment to the rules and figure out how they are going to, they would benefit from that. So that is the position with that.
When we look at the 10% to be reviewed on an annual basis, in other words, let's just do it now, and in a year's time, we'll come back and we'll see whether the confidence building measures of sort that you are asking for are being fulfilled.
Well, as I told you, APSSM, in relation to this, the answer, well, the joint unions were no. It was no. Initially, it was no, absolutely. When it came back that, all right, they were thinking that rather than 3 years, they would look at it a year. After a year, there would be a review at 6 months. And then after a year, we would come back, we would revisit. The answer was still no, because it was no on the condition that certain things were being put in place. There were also, in the case of, and Dean can support me on, in the case of PSU and BNTU, was that their members were saying absolutely no, they could not afford it. It would mean that they would be pushing some of their members just now below the poverty level. So generally speaking, they would have been living, there are persons who are living basically paycheck to paycheck, and not pushing them, taking that 10% would have meant maybe just the little they had in terms of spending power, the little that they had.
And just to clarify, that proposal of the yearly review was an across-the-board 10% cut, no exemptions.
Yes, well, they had come up with the exemption of the persons making under $12,000. Okay. But I want at least Dean to chime in as well in relation to this, so you can hear his view as it relates to.
With regards to first of all, with regards to the 4 hours or 5 hours concession, as I would call them, that the government was prepared to give up. The response was, it's good, but it does not allow me to make up that 10%. And as Sister Sharon said, most people, the salaries of public officers is already committed. I mean, in the consultations with government, and this is something that really broke my heart. We were informed that these loan sharks institutions, I was clueless that these individuals go to the ATMs with what I now understand is manila envelopes filled with ATM cards, plastic bags or suitcases full with ATM cards of public officers.
Wow.
Yeah.
These institutions are charging, about 25%. Yeah. I didn't know that. I mean, that thing still hurt me to know that thousands of public officers have given up their ATM cards to these loan shark institutions.
Wow.
These people cannot afford 10% of their salary. They will end up either at a crazy house, in jail, on the street, or killed if they owe some serious people out there.
Yeah.
And so they were giving them 4 hours or 5 hours still would not be giving them a second employment or the opportunity at a second chance employment for them to bridge that shortfall in their salary. Also, when it comes to the nurses, it would have been highly impossible. Yeah. We have a shortage in nurses. Our nurses are forced and are being worked like slaves to work overtime, for which they still don't collect on a monthly basis. So it would have, we received feedback from them, and they were like, yo, we are kill people. I mean, people will literally die at the hospital if it is that we can now the public 4 or 5 hours. That doesn't apply to us.
Yeah.
We cannot consider. So there was
Reducing
we-
work
we
hours
don't-
doesn't work in all workplaces.
yeah.
That's
yeah,
understood.
It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
And transport people, the police,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have worked. So while we did not object to it, and while I was the one who said, well, 4 hours, that's 10% of the work time, but perhaps because of the 5 days work week, 5 hours, maybe that's something we could take back. So we took that back. But as we said, when
Yeah.
the conversation
Yeah.
really started and we started getting the kind of participation that we were hoping we get, well, it couldn't work. Simply couldn't work.
Then the government took the position that ministers of state, and area representatives would take a 15% salary cut and 50% reduction in their entertainment and telephone allowances. And Sharon, I know dear to you all, the heads of department continue to surrender their allowances.
I will tell you that we were amenable to it.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that in the initial stage, I had indicated from APSSM point perspective that I wasn't so comfortable with their willingness to give up 50% of their allowances, because at that point they didn't say what allowances at that point, simply because there are HODs and senior managers and even some public officers who do get allowances that forms part of their emoluments that in fact are committed to the financial institution. But as far as the cut is concerned, we had no objection.
Okay.
That is what they were willing to give up.
Well, and I imagine, because this was part of the very early request that we heard from you. What about, flipping it on the other side? A part of the olive branch being offered is to work along with financial institutions to extend what they call the forbearance, which means, they would stop the foreclosure of homes and people who have mortgages during this period. It seems like a fair offer.
Marlene, despite how that might sound to you, in fact, the previous administration had given that same assurance, and persons were allowed to not pay their mortgages for 3 months. But in fact, it ended up costing those officers more. Why more? Because they still had to pay their interest, they still had to pay their insurance, and that 3 months was then added on to the end, what would have been the end period of them paying their mortgage. It then meant they would still have to then be paying, it's paying double the interest, and in fact the insurance fees and everything that go along with it. So that, and we are talking, if that happens now, it is until December, I think they said. You can imagine, that is just, as they keep on saying, kicking the can down the road. And it might very well put a public officer, especially one who is near retirement age, in problems, because how now would he be able to meet his commitment on a pension, right? A pension which, mind you, would have been reduced by 10%.
Dean, it sounds like you want to chime in there.
That one, while it might sound a little bit encouraging, it is not a good proposal. It is not a good proposal.
So it was a no.
No, because, and let me explain why. $10 million, 5 at DFC and 5 at the National Bank at preferred interest rates. You don't know what those rates are, but $10 million can only accommodate 200 people at $50,000 per loan. I'm pretty quite sure John House must cost $50,000. Now here's Merlin. And only 200 people, if we limit it at $50,000, only 200 public officers would be able to benefit. So clearly that won't have worked, because how do you now decide on the limit? I think 50,000 would have been a fair sum, but only 200 people, and then we have this wide cross-section of public officers. So the sum that they are proposing simply won't have sufficed 14,000 or at least 10,000 public officers. Secondly, as Sister Sharon has already explained, you do not want to set your people up to have a mortgage or a loan over their head beyond their retirement age. And most of us, including myself, have a mortgage set that it would finish between 50 and 55 if it is that I work that long or I'm blessed to see those days. So getting any forbearance that would push you beyond the age of 55, you'll be setting up yourself if you let you lose your house when you're right at the end. So
understood. I hear your point. Let me just get forward with this one. So the government did propose to draft a whistleblower act and a criminal unjust enrichment law. They said they draft it, they bring it to you in 6 to 8 months, and then move on to enactment. Seems like it was an offer to give you what you've been asking for.
Marlene, we've seen where bills have been drafted. We've seen where it has gone to the House. And in fact, there's still no implementation. Take the OSH bill, for example. It is years that matter has been on the table. They have blamed the unions and in fact, chamber, the social partners, but that is not true.
But is it fair though? Because this is a different administration. It's different leadership.
Yes, I accept that. But once you're burned, if a dog bites you, Marlene, would you go into another yard with a different dog? Right? Understand? Once it's a trust issue. Yeah. We're dealing with trust issues. And I can't force my members to say, listen to me, I've gone in the meeting, they seem genuine. They're dealing with issues that they have been bitten already in terms of certain things that we have been asking for.
And that's exactly this, because if you're out on the streets, that's exactly the sentiment of the public, whereby it is a trust issue actually caused by politics. But we don't have much time, but there are so many things yet that we would like to know about. And finally, for us, or for me, is the fact that we've also heard about your 21 days plan of action and maybe strike action. Can you attest to this? And what would be those 21 days plan of action?
Well, let me just say before I answer that, John, that in the True Blue manifesto, there was some trust, there was some good governance trust there, which said that most of those would have been implemented within 100 days of taking office because they come at no cost. Look at the True Blue manifesto. We're now past 100 days, and outside of the adjustment in terms of the composition of the pact, nothing has been done. And so it goes back again. How serious are we about ensuring that we put in place good governance legislation to hold ourselves accountable?
But if you don't want a draft in 6 to 8 months, then what is it that you're requesting? If you say you want a Whistleblowers Act or the laws in place to cut down on the corrupt practices that you see, then what is it that they can't bring the bill and just pass it, because you know there'll probably be concerns about what's in it or not in it. Mm-hmm. Is it a shorter timeline that you're asking for? Is it next week, next month?
But at least, Marlene, it would be on the table.
Okay.
So it would show members the seriousness of this administration to pass those. These are not things that we have not been asking for. And I keep on saying in whatever appearance I make is that maybe it is the unions to blame for not highlighting the fact that we have been asking for these things for years. It is not just today under this administration we've been asking for it. We've been very respectful about what it is we're asking for. It is at the end of the day that we are the persons who will take the lick. We are the persons who will have to go home and explain to our family that, well, you see that outing we normally took, we can't take it because I don't have the money, or we can't buy this, or we can't do this. People have to understand that public officers, teachers, also have been affected by the pandemic. They might very well have spouses, children
Yeah.
who are not working either. And now to take a cut with the increase of gas prices, with the increase of fuel, with the increase of chicken, which in fact would have been some of the basic things that are needed. You
So,
understand? And I definitely would not want to see my public officers or teachers be eating ramen, and even that has raised to 125. I was made to understand.
so let me,
Marlene, the
go
good,
ahead.
when we were talking campaign finance reform, Darrell Bradley immediately went to work and produced a draft.
He did.
The PUP has been in a position for 12 years. They've been talking good governance, and not a single drop of any legislation. And then you still make the commitment that you'll implement these legislation within the first 100 days, but you come empty-handed, and then you come to sell the dream that you're going to now move to present draft. They should have been consulting whilst in a position with these drafts,
Dean
so
is,
that upon taking office, its implementation and met with get back what we need to get back and jail who we need to jail, and close these loopholes. This system has been abused since 1981.
so what I am hearing from this conversation is that some of the proposals that have been put forward to you are open to, but it's just not enough. You want definitive timelines and decisive actions as to specifically good governance laws and policies and regulations that will show that the wastage stops. You want a date, you want a bill, you want something there to say that. Now,
And implement what can be implemented. I keep reminding them.
yes.
The Financial Secretary is in violation of the Fiscal Accountability and Transparency Act. He's in violation of that law. Why hasn't he been dragged to court?
So,
Why he continues to hold one of the highest office in this country whilst in violation of an act?
let me bring, because that's another topic to be able, but I want to get a definitive answer. Are we going to see industrial action?
From the PSU standpoint of view, on the 8th of April, we had some polls. We had 3 rounds of polls. And I can say to you that 83% of those who participated in the poll voted.
How many people participated?
83%, sorry?
How many people participated?
We had approximately, I think the number is around 1,000 thereabout over the 3 sessions.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right? We had 83% giving a clear direction to the Council of Management to declare a trade dispute with the government of Belize.
Okay.
That is now with our legal advisors, and the Council of Management meets today and meets tomorrow as well to deliberate on this, to look at the numbers and to get the legal advice that we need before we proceed with what we've been mandated to do.
Yeah.
Just for transparency, 2% voted no.
Okay.
They said no, and 3% abstained, and we had 12% who decided not to participate in the vote any at all. So we've been given a clear mandate for us to proceed in declaring a trade dispute. Once we do that, it is the responsibility of the Minister of Labor and the Minister of Public Service to respond, and we go from there. But if they don't respond, as seemed to be the norm with the office of the Prime Minister, and this does not apply to the office of the Minister of Public Service. I think we have gotten a lot of response from his CEO where correspondence is concerned. I can tell you we've never received that response or any correspondence from the Office of the Prime Minister. I can say to you, even as a delegate of the NTUCB, there has been absolutely no communication by the Office of the Prime Minister with the NTUCB, much less the acknowledgement of any correspondence sent there. So,
do you?
Again, I say Belize really.
Well, we did see the message come out from the Prime Minister, and my question, just lastly to you, which is a sense of what I get in conversations over the past few days, seems like it's a done deal. It seems like the salary cut will proceed. The growing debt has the situation has to be stopped at some point in time. How do you feel about that? When people say, do you have the same sentiment that this is going to happen no matter if you lodge a trade dispute complaint, no matter if you keep on, doing public appearances and press conferences and speaking on your point of view? Do you feel that this is a done deal?
I think based on the correspondence sent to us, the government has made up its mind that as part of its renegotiation strategy. Because let me break this thing down. If you're presenting a budget, and let's say you remove or you don't take out that $60 or that $80 million, you would simply have if your budget is 180. So it's either in there or it's not in there. But let's say the government has it in there. The government can look at their situation. If they leave it in there, let's say they decide not to take it out. In 6 months' time, the government can be reviewing its financial performance and decide whether or not it will be able to meet that budget as presented. And then at that point in time, the government still has the opportunity to come back to the unions and say, look, it doesn't look like I'll meet this. So pass the kind of austerity measures that were passed last year to ensure that then they remove it towards the end of the year. But you could bridge that shortfall in your deficit by simply allocating that to revenues, and then you force yourself to collect that excess in revenues. But I want to say that this is not about the budget. This is about the government needing to renegotiate debt and needing fiscal space. So the $80 million has nothing really to do with the budget. So whatever is presented today is the $80 million is insignificant to the $1.3 billion budget that was presented last year and that probably will be presented this year, okay? So I want us to understand that the $80 million has no impact on the budget. The $80 million has impact on what is being sold to bondholders and to the people that we owe in terms of, okay, I'll do this, but if this, and this is where we have to be careful as Belizeans, because I'm hoping for the best for my country. I'm really hoping that we can renegotiate those debts or get some forgiveness on those debts. Yeah. But what I don't want to see is that the government go and negotiate a fiscal space to push back these debts, and then they go right back and continue borrow and spend recklessly and continue stealing from the people, I believe, because who has really stolen from the Belizeans our politicians? Well, and that happens today, Marlene. It happens today because I can tell you, I have been informed that there are mobile testing clinics going to resorts. Now I ask myself, how is it that these mobile testing clinics, which have been, there is a relationship that I understand exists between those mobile testing clinics and the Minister of Health and people in the Ministry of Health. Now, how is it that they have those tourist information at which hotel? Those tourists should be getting their tests at the Philippines Airport or at our public facilities so that the government can earn revenue. So the behavior does not change, it continues. And until Belizeans stand up with the union to ensure that these good governance measures are put in place and people in such a way that people are held accountable, Belize could readjust and they could cut as much as they want. We will simply be a failed state sooner rather than later.
Well, Dean, this is surely not going to be the last conversation. This is a developing issue. And of course, today we really appreciated the update. Thank you to Sharon on behalf of the APSSM and Dean on behalf of the PSU for providing this update. We will be in touch, and of course, stay safe in the meantime. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
good
you.
morning.
All right, coming up in our show for this morning, we'll be discussing how to get children mentally prepared to go back to school. Jenny will be breaking that down for us when we come back.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.